Okay, so Dan, welcome to the podcast. It's good to connect.
Yeah, good to connect with you too, Alex. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. And I said off air, thank you for your patience as well. I've had a couple of mistakes in regards to our previous scheduled podcast, so I just want to sort of officially say that again. But I'm looking forward to chatting about this because your journey, I think, is very relevant to a lot of the listeners who'll be tuning into this episode. And it's also, I think, to be honest, quite inspirational because you've gone from struggling with things like insomnia, anxiety, depression, and it's kind of been the foundation of where you are today with being a founder of a company and having incredibly successful podcasts. So there's almost two elements, I think, to this, which is quite exciting. But for those people that aren't yet familiar with you, your story, what you get up to these days, are you happy just to start with a little intro?
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess the way that I describe myself is a serial entrepreneur who has a passion for helping people. Ultimately, that's the thing that I enjoy the most. But I've got two podcasts. So one is Secret Leaders that people know me quite well for because it's the UK's #1 business podcast. And then the other podcast is Brain Care, which is by my company Heights, which is growing a lot faster than Secret Leaders ever did originally. But I think that might have more to do with the size of the market of podcasting, frankly,
Sure.
and the growth there. And then my full-time occupation is as the co-founder of Heights. So that is a business that I started a couple of years ago. And we describe that as a brain care company, which is obviously quite, it's not a term that anyone's heard of before, and that's quite purposeful. So we're very into this idea of trying to create a category around brain care, around making people think about, brain care like they think of skin care, right? You have good routines, you look after your skin, you look after your hair, you look after your nails, you look after these things that aren't necessarily showing physical demonstration of improving there and then that day. I'm putting cream on my hands right now. Not really doing very much for me, but the idea is over the long term, by caring for these things a little bit each day, they last longer because our bodies decay. And so very much our insight with the brain is, it is out of sight, out of mind. There's loads of weird metaphors and parallels, obviously, with the meta-ness of that statement, but we don't pay attention to our brains. We don't look after them. And nutrition is one of the most scientifically proven ways to look after our brains, but probably the least talked about thing. When we have a mental health problem or we're looking to avoid one, which would be ideal, but obviously that's not how most people behave in society, of course. But, we think about everything on a psychological level. So we don't think about anything on a biological level when it comes to our brain. We just think about, an example of, if I've got anxiety, is it my environment? Should I go to a therapist? Do I need to talk to more friends? Do I need to meditate? All of these things are about your mind. But actually, in my experience, which of course we can come into, I had a biological issue, which was my brain being essentially underfed of the nutrients it needed to thrive. And I went on a long and painful journey with insomnia before discovering that. And ever since, I've been writing newsletters that rewrite science papers every week. And they're not all on nutrition, but the vast, there's thousands of science papers on the benefits of various ingredients on our brains for mental performance, but also for a whole bunch of different mental health issues. And it can literally demonstrate that that ingredient helps contribute to much better health or much better recovery in some cases from a lot of these diseases. And it's just not talked about. So for us, I think, this is sort of where our insight came from. It came from personal experience. And of course, let's talk about it. But it's this idea of care that I think we're really interested in because it's already a space that people understand. We understand oral care, we understand skin care, we don't understand brain care. So that's my job. My job is to try and communicate that as well as I possibly can. And in 5 or 10 years, when people are talking about brain care, you can come back to this episode and go, that guy was onto something.
Absolutely. And I love that idea of, you weren't feeding your brain the right nutrients. I think that's just a nice way of almost visualizing what was going on there. So I would love to kind of speak with you maybe afterwards around some of the things that we can be doing from a day, weekly perspective with our nutrition and lifestyle. But if we rewind first, what was going on at the time? And I guess ultimately, what was that journey of dealing with insomnia to founding Heights, I guess, ultimately?
Yeah. So it was about 4 years ago, and I was objectively very happy in life. So I had lots of different things going on that made me happy. I was getting married in the summer. My mum had just recovered from cancer. I'm a very glass half full kind of guy anyway. Practice gratitude, forgiveness, like all of these things, because I've learned in my life that, you know, the opposite never really helps anyone, just from observing people in my family that don't behave like that. So um, the the reality is I was pretty happy. If you asked me how I was, I'd say happy, fulfilled, etc. But then one night I just couldn't sleep. And then that happened the next night, and then the next night. And, you know, I started to feel quite drained, but like my symptoms, just to be clear, I always say I couldn't sleep, and then I correct myself. I really need to remember to tell the story correctly the first time. I could go to sleep about midnight, but I woke up at 2 a.m. wide awake. And so it was never actually a problem. And this is the thing with insomnia, because I could get to sleep but couldn't stay asleep. You know, I didn't diagnose it as insomnia to myself, but that is still insomnia. I had 2 hours of sleep and I was wide awake at 2, full of energy, full of beans, so full of creativity. So I started working. And in my living room before I'd go to work, you know, I'd get to work at 10 a.m. and I'd already done 8 hours of work that day, right? So I've basically done my working day. So for a little while, I'm like telling myself the narrative of how productive I am, and the fact, you know, the narrative that fit my circumstance. To say like I'm more productive than everyone else. Elon Musk sleeps 2 hours a night. I'm probably a genius. This is awesome. You know, instead of like I've got a problem, I'm glamorizing the hustle instead. So that went on for like a couple of weeks, and I started to get really drained. And then it goes on for a month. And at this point, you know, I have gone to the doctor and I've explained what's happening to me, because there hasn't been any respite at all. And the doctor just gave me sleeping pills, which I appreciate would work, but I was like not looking for that, because it's very obvious to me. I mean, I could have just taken sleeping pills, like I know that. So I was looking to get to the root cause of the problem. I went to a sleep therapist. I did Sleepio, I did Calm. You know, I tried all sorts of things, no alcohol, more alcohol, no coffee, like you name it, I tried it. Nothing worked. And in the end, it was like 5 months later. And in this period of time, I'd started to get like really terrible anxiety, which is obvious, I guess. I mean, it's not obvious. I have no idea if that, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if that's like common for everyone with insomnia, but there's two manifestations. One is like I'm so overtired that I'm like sort of zombie in the day at work, but also, you know, I'm in meetings and suddenly just breaking out in cold and hot sweats. Like real sense of dread just filling my body out of nowhere. You know, it's not like someone's telling me something terrifying in a meeting. It could be anything. I was just like having these sort of, you know, mild anxiety attacks, having to leave the room, not really sure what's going on, like literally drenched in my own sweat. And it's very frustrating and embarrassing because I was the CEO. And so that was like the daytime manifestation. Then the other one that's really obvious about the anxiety is obviously like when it's starting to get to bedtime, which is like, there's nothing more terrifying when you are an insomniac, the idea that it's about to become your most predictable part of the day, which is you won't be able to stay asleep. So the whole thing just doesn't help, but like you end up falling asleep because you're so tired because you barely had any sleep, but then the same thing happens again the next night. So you're in a cycle. So at this point, I like basically resigned to the fact that this is probably my reality from now on. But I went for dinner with a friend and she asked me if I'd heard of brain nutrition. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. She's not a doctor or anything. But she's like, you know, I went to see a dietitian. I'd had a similar problem. I went to see a dietitian. This is what they basically told me. They told me that I've got a brain nutrition problem. It's very common and it's increasingly common, especially if, and this is the thing, like I had become vegetarian. Like it's especially common in vegetarians, vegans, flexitarians, but also like keto, anyone that's changing their diet drastically in some capacity, you know, doesn't think at all about what they might be doing to their brain. And so the switch in nutrients has like created an impact on me. Anyway, I was like, okay, well, I mean, I literally try anything. So I went to a dietitian. She literally took 1 minute maximum to ask me some questions and then diagnosed me with that problem and was like, you basically just need supplements. I'm going to prescribe you DHA omega-3, B vitamin complex, blueberry extract. And she explained the reasons. She's like, DHA omega-3 because your brain is 60% fat and 90% of the fat is the compound DHA. you won't be getting any really if you're a vegetarian. Like, frankly, that's a given. But she's like, in my clinic, sadly, you have this like weird dichotomy. Most people get their DHA from fish. Fish get their DHA from algae. FYI, they don't make their own DHA, so it's actually really interesting biologically. But that's where most people get those from. But she's like, but then we have this issue as well, which is like organic and, magnesium, is it magnesium? Sorry, iron, in fish and all this stuff. So she's like, you can't even tell people as a dietitian to have that much fish because that's also not good for them. Right. So she's like, we get stuck in this situation anyway, but she says she does see it more with vegans, vegetarians, and anyone that's basically cutting out different, bits and pieces in their diet. Yeah. And she didn't have the best bedside manner. She was very matter of fact. She was like, take these. Tell me how we get on. And I was super skeptical because I had been taking B12 because everyone tells you to take B12. But like, generally speaking, I wasn't really a supplement person. I was just like very healthy. Generally speaking, I work out. I'm not obsessive about anything. I just try to be generally as healthy as I possibly can within the limits of like having a busy lifestyle. So I think that's a good way to be. But she was very clear. She was like, you are depleting your brain all over the shop. So take these. Don't get them from Holland & Barrett or Boots. Why not? I don't understand. And she was like, because of the quality. Basically, if it costs like £10, then you're not getting a good deal. You think you are, but there is a whole marketing versus science thing in supplements. You need to go to Planet Organic or Whole Foods. And she's like, I know that it'll cost 4 times the price in your mind, but in reality, pound for pound, milligram for milligram, you're paying the same. You're just getting what you need to get. So I was like, right, okay, none of this really adds up to me, but I will just follow your advice. So I went to Planet Organic. I bought what she told me. It cost me 120 quid. And I was like, that's ridiculous. But I'd also never spent that kind of money on supplements in my life, right? So it was a bit like mental.
Yeah.
But you don't care if you have a mental health problem and someone tells you to do something, you do it. And within a week, I was sleeping like a baby. It started like, an hour and a half, like a bit more each day. But, the first day that I woke up at like 7 a.m., I was like, oh my God. Didn't get too excited that day, but it happened the next day. Called her up and was like, in ecstatic, you've cured me. I'm so happy. Thank you so much, etc., etc. And she was so completely nonchalant. She was basically just like, yeah, I know. Instead of being like happy for me or anything, she was just like, yeah, I know, like sort of sighing. And I was like, right, okay. And basically, like, I chatted to her afterwards. She's just a bit sick and tired. She's like, supplements work. I am a dietitian. I am a medically trained dietitian. The problem that I have is that, one, a lot of doctors don't believe in nutrition supplementation, but and certainly, and this is her thing, she's like, major issue is if you're like regulated or you're a professional, you can't really say things at scale, right? So as a dietitian, it's very hard to just say take supplements because everything needs to be on a one-to-one personal basis because they're licenses, etc. In the meantime, nutritionists don't have to do anything because anyone can be a nutritionist. And she was explaining, I mean, again, I had no idea about all this stuff, but anyone can be a nutritionist. Not anyone can be a dietitian, as you know. So there are obviously great nutritionists and bad nutritionists, but she's like, Instagram has flooded the market with nutritionists who don't have any legal, consequence of saying whatever they want. So they're all recommending supplements all over the place with all their different agendas and affiliate fees and flooding the market with bad quality stuff. So people like me lose all trust. Because they're like, well, I mean, someone that I don't trust is telling me to take supplements, therefore I don't believe in them whatsoever. But when you go to a professional like her, that is the first thing that she recommends, and she tells you about the quality and why it'll work and everything else. So her whole mentality to this was just like sheer exasperation because I was the nth customer who'd come to her with the same issue, rolls her eyes, take these, oh my God, they work. Yes, they work. Do you know what I mean? It's like really interesting. So I sort of took all of this on with a pure fascination at what a market that has just ruined itself and deserves to, like, such low trust, such low quality, so many marketing scams. It's literally a marketing scam industry because you can make a marketing claim on the front. I mean, the one example that I give here is 7 C's omega-3 oil, which is just, and I only use them. I've got no agenda against them. I use them because they're the biggest and best brand in the world that everyone knows. So it's the one that, I had growing up as a kid and everything else. They're like £15 for a month of omega-3s. They are like all supplements have to say the stuff legally on their packets, so they do. But it's like you have to take 45 milligrams to make a marketing claim like helps healthy heart function, helps healthy brain function. But the scientific dosage is 250. So you have to take 7Cs for 6 days in a row to have 1 day worth of what my dietitian was telling me I needed to have according to science to improve my brain's health. But no one reads the small print. It's just an asterisk on the front, right? So I would have gone in and I would have bought 7Cs because she'd have told me omega-3, and I wouldn't have had any impact, and I wouldn't have known that it had worked. And the whole industry is like that, basically. There's a huge chasm. If you think about the difference between 45 and 250, that is an enormous difference between where you can make a marketing claim for working and actual scientific dosage. So this was like the original insight, and I was like, wow, you can, I mean, I was previously a tech founder. It's very hard to innovate in tech. So I found it highly amusing that you might be able to innovate in supplements by just not ripping people off. Like, how bizarre is that? That was the first insight. The second one was, again, as a consumer, I've lost so much trust from charismatic marketeers selling me things that I don't believe in, because there's so many of them, and because where's the evidence? And what is the thing going on here? So I thought it'd be a much better approach to check out the science papers and read science papers about what ingredients do, what is good for your brain in general, right? Beyond nutrition. How do you take care of your brain according to science? And so because I was enjoying doing that, I started writing a newsletter. And the idea was I'll read one science paper every week, recommunicate it in plain English, send it on Sunday. It's a 3-minute read. Every week you learn one thing that's better for your brain according to science. And that's it. 2 years later, I'm still writing that. The next one goes out tomorrow. And building up an audience and a community around trust, because what I always so I'm always writing it, it's always from me. But what I'm explaining to people is, this is not my opinion. Here's the science paper. Science papers are boring, as you probably know. I'm rewriting this so that you will read it in good comms, in good tone. But here's the original link to the paper, usually on PubMed, obviously. So, that's like being the process that started the company, which is, how can you build a brand that is all about helping people take care of their brain, creating supplements that are such high quality that they actually have an impact on you and make a difference, and feed your brain what it needs to thrive according to science, but use trust as like the basis of everything that we do. And so we brought on board a chief science officer in the form of Dr. Tara Swart. She's awesome, a neuroscientist, but she has a PhD in neuropharmacology. So specifically, literally what we needed to be like, what should we formulate? What would the best product in the world be in your point of view? Why? What would the ingredients be? What are the science papers that back up that ingredient is worthwhile? And, this is the whole process that we went about with her. So, our founding team essentially was me, my business partner, Joel, who's much smarter than me. So he can do all sorts of things like operations, which is quite important for a business, and Tara. And so we really started like that.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think it is such an important message to get out there around sort of the supplement industry and its lack of regulation. I always mention a study to some of my clients on probiotics. It's the exact same thing, whereby they've taken some products off the high street shelf and they found bacteria in the product that aren't on the label and bacteria on the label that aren't in the product. And it's a bit of the Wild West, as some people call it.
Dude, so so many stories on this, but when we started, there's so many things that we did. So everyone always said to us, obviously, like, you guys won't be able to do this because you don't know the industry or not from it, etc., etc. Which is for anyone listening that ever wants to be an entrepreneur, is like such bollocks. It's a good thing to know nothing, because it means you don't have any ego, you don't have any presumed knowledge, so you ask good questions. So we just kept asking questions to everyone who was a supplement taker. Why are you? What do you do? What's your behavior? We uncovered so many different things, but just pulling on that thread that you just mentioned, we found that all products have caking agents and synthetic fillers. What is in those caking agents and synthetic fillers? At best case, chalk. At worst case, cyanide. So there are literally some supplements that have cyanide as their caking agent, which, considering everyone knows what cyanide is, you would wonder why they would choose a well-known branded poison. But anyway, legitimately, that's what some of them are. And the reason for this is, again, if you imagine a pill and you imagine how much, volume of, let's say vitamin D, for example. The volume you need of vitamin D to make a pill is a tiny amount for the actual dosage. So you have to make the pill up from something else. So it has to be a bulking agent to turn it into a pill. So you're literally consuming 99% pretty much of something that you weren't intending to take for your little 1% dose of vitamin D, which is bonkers. So this is how most products are made. If you think about 7Cs, 45 milligrams, but the pill size is exactly the same. So the rest of it is just a filler. So this is what they do because the fillers are cheap ingredients that cost them a penny. So the whole industry is like that. So I always say to people, if you're taking supplements, genuinely most supplements, it's not even about what you want to be taking, it's how much are you taking that you didn't even expect, that you're not like, you're putting in your body that you don't want or need and certainly had no intention of ever taking. And it's all literally there on the packs. They have to explain this stuff, and they do, but the small print is so tiny. It's like a magnifying glass. It's so ridiculous. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that we did was, we understood that most people that start taking supplements don't carry on. So it's not actually very hard to encourage someone to start taking supplements. In fact, most people start taking supplements at some point, but they don't continue. They get out of the habit. And there's so many reasons why. One is efficacy. Like, most people like to be able to feel that, actually, over this period of time, I do feel a bit better. I'm noticing a slight improvement, whatever it might be. You'll never feel that with cheap supplements. Like, promise you, the margins, the way that the ingredient pricing works, retail, etc. If you're buying supplements for under £10 in general, not everything, but it's virtually impossible for that to be high quality. Like, the margins don't work. There's VAT, like there's retail tax. I mean, it's like the same time as someone explains to you about buying a £7 bottle of wine that you've actually just bought 1 penny's worth of wine. It's the same thing. You can't get around the fact that there's tax, that there's retail margins. Like, you can't literally buy them for that price. So there's that side of like low quality, and then there's literally building habits. So because most supplements come in a normal bottle, like all other bottles, people put them in a supplement cupboard, and it stays out of sight and out of mind, and you do not build a habit that way. So we went to town redesigning the whole entire packaging experience so that we had a bottle that looks so different that you keep it out by your bedside table or in front of your desk at work, which pretty much all of our customers do. So we always talk very transparently about like all of our numbers as a company, because we want to bring people on a journey of transparency with us. The industry in general has 25% a month churn, which means that if 100 people buy supplements in month 1, only 75 of them are taking it in month 2, only 50 in month 3, and then it tails out about 15% after month 4 or 5. So teeny. Our churn rate is 5%. So it is so much higher than the rest of the industry. And there's so many things that we do for this, like communicating with our customers after they purchase to help them reach their heights. So we have like a coaching journey, depending on what you identify as your problem. Some people come to us for sleep, some for anxiety, some for just like, I'm actually fine, I just want to optimize my mental performance. And so we send them personalized communication, like, short, snappy emails, but short, snappy nudges and things that can actually help them. But written with credible professionals. So other than Dr. Tara Swart, we've got Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. I mean, I won't name all of them because it just sound like loads of humble bragging. But we've got PhDs for sleep, PhDs for anxiety, like expert content that can help people understand what's going on with them based on where they are on their journey. So it's a lot more than just having a product. It's like trying to understand where you are on your journey and how to take you to a better level. And once you're at that better level, how do we improve your experience there? So it's really thinking about, people's experience with where they are in brain care right now and how being involved in a company like us can improve things. And I think it's a really interesting perspective, just on the basis that if you've chosen, sorry, my cat has decided to come and join. That's what all this jumping around is. If you've decided to engage with a brand, if you think about it from a consumer point of view, if you decided to engage with a brand to improve your brain's health, one way or another, wherever you are on the journey, if it's good, bad, whatever, you're already open-minded enough to say, I'm curious to learn more. So you're already like interested in engaging with the content, right? You're already experiencing a new brand in your life, like anyone experiences any brand, where you've got a trust relationship with them and they've got everything to prove to you. And if you're continuing to do that journey well as the brand, and you're continuing to demonstrate that actually your experience now of getting our emails or following us on social media is encouraging you to think more about what your brain is doing, according to science. Maybe it's literally as simple, and this is one of the most common things we get from people, like that our content and reminders just like help them drink a bit more water a bit more regularly, which is probably, no, not probably, according to science, far more likely to make them feel more energetic than coffee. Nothing wrong with coffee, I drink coffee, but I'm just saying that there are little things that you can do to educate people about very simple things that are free, widely available to all of us, that are little prompts. And we ask people to take a brain health survey when they join, and then a month again. So it's a subscription product, and before they get their next month's shipment, we ask them to take the brain health survey again. And pretty much almost everyone improves their score over the course of a month. And that's not necessarily from our product. I'm not here to say, it's a miracle cure. Like everything, it's lifestyle. So it's not just does taking the smart supplement improve your overall sense of well-being. I'd love to say yes, but of course, like according to science, within a month, that is going to be for some people and not for everyone, because usually it's 3 months, FYI. And that is what all the data says about supplements. It takes a minimum of 3 months to actually be feeling any difference. But if you are personally choosing to engage with a new brand in your life that is about wellness, that is encouraging you to learn and think more about how you look after yourself, your overall sense of well-being will improve. It's as simple as that. And the same could be said about whether you were just listening to hustle porn business podcasts all day long, or you started listening to podcasts that were about your health. Your health would improve if you were listening to the latter. Right. So we don't try and suggest to anyone that it's like a cure-all for anything, but as a brand, our opportunity with our customers is saying, you join us, we will literally explain to you how to take care of your brain on a regular basis, and your health will improve because of that. So it's like an overall brand experience from our point of view.
No, I love that. And I certainly know from our kind of community perspective, and something I've seen over the years working with clients one-to-one is, as you say, this kind of challenge of taking the supplements as recommended to get the actual health benefits. So, I mean, a question I would love to pick your brain on is, are there 3, 4, 5 things that come to mind that you could give as recommendations around what can we do to make supplementation an easier process for us? Because as you say, most of us have our covered. A lot of us forget to take them when we should. Are you happy to share some quick tips to make that process easier for people?
Yeah, so look, it's really interesting. There's so many different ways to answer a question. One interesting story that I have is about ease, right? So our product is 2 pills a day. And because we have 60 capsules is 2 pills a day. And the most common thing that we're replacing for people is your multivitamin and your omega-3s, because a lot of people take both. So they're already taking more pills. My favorite customer story around this is the founder of Planet Organic, right, where my journey started. She became an investor in us. But she is one of, she might be our number 1 customer on the basis of she has 5 subscriptions. So for her husband and her 3 kids. And this is a lady who has free supplements. She is the founder of Planet Organic. She can have whatever she wants, right? But she pays full price for 5 subscriptions for her and her whole family, because she was taking from Planet Organic is 10 pills. So for her, this is not a question about money. She doesn't care. It's a matter of convenience. She literally is getting what was in those 10 pills a day in R2, because because we are literally making these from scratch, designing them from scratch, whereas she's a retailer, right? So she's using what is already sold. So she's not in control of how these products are made. So for her, it's just more convenient to take our product than other people's. So that's one way of answering it, which is just one of the main reasons why people end up starting supplements and stopping is because they're told, take vitamin D, they buy vitamin D, take vitamin C, they buy vitamin C, take zinc, they buy zinc. And you open up your cupboard and you're like, oh, God, I don't feel like eating 10 pills right now, right? This is where multivitamins are good, but the problem with multivitamins is that they put in all the minimums in everything. So again, you're not getting the scientific dosages. That's not true in all of them. Of course, there's good and bad, right? But this is very common. So the first tip is instead of having 10 bottles, you have 1. The second is you put it out, and this is the other thing with heights versus the others. You're just not going to have 10 bottles out on your workstation or your bedside table. You look like a maniac. So, ours is literally being designed on purpose to look like a statement feature. right? It doesn't look like any other bottle in the market on purpose so that you keep it out and it actually looks nice in living rooms, right? Our first thing that we did when we were designing our bottle, other than like getting our community involved in helping us design it, was asking people, and mostly their wives, to be honest, would you have this in your bedside table? Would you have this by your workstation? You know, and until the answer was yes from everyone, we knew that we hadn't nailed the bottle design. And we had like designs that we thought were nicer, but like ultimately this is not about what we think. This is about, will people keep it out of sight and out of mind, or will they put it in front of them? So the clue and trick to building habits is all about environment. So everyone thinks that people who have good habits are geniuses, but they're not at all. They're literally people who stick the thing either out or in their face that they're trying to improve at. So same thing goes for supplements. Like, you know, I will show you, I have a trick that, you know, every day before I start work, I want to be grateful. I want to practice gratitude. So I want to just be thankful for waking up every single day, right? Because especially, you know, we're in a pandemic, people are dying. I want to be grateful just for the chance to have another day.
Right.
I'm not a genius. I have a note. I wrote myself a note. There it is on a piece of paper. It sits in front of me. I can't miss it. It's in my environment. I don't wake up every day like some saint thinking, oh, morning world, I'm so grateful for being here. I wake up the same as everyone else does. I wake up tired or awake or like ready for the day or not. It's a mixed bag like anyone. So if I want to be grateful, I write it on a note and I stick it in my face. So that's how you build habits. And that's the same thing with supplements. So like I say, for a lot of people, it's like the convenience of that. Also, I want to say, like, from a responsible point of view, we always say as a company, like, the first thing you should do is not take our product. It is a supplement. Supplement is literally the word. The clue is in the name. It's not a food replacement. If you are lucky enough to have the time and money, because it's quite expensive. I know this from basically cooking. I thought the first incarnation of our business was going to be food, by the way. So, you know, and I'm not a very good cook, but I was finding all these brain food recipes. The first things we ever did were brain food recipes. And I was amalgamating all these amazing things that you could do and cook at home and stuff. And I went fucking wild on making like blueberry pancakes and like, all of these things to like show that you can do it in an interesting way. But my God, is it expensive and time consuming.
Right.
Plus you have to have a lot of fish, which is not very practical for vegetarians. So like the amount of seaweed related things I was making, it wasn't tasting amazing. So I realized it wasn't overly practical. But if you can, and like I say, you can only really do this as at least a fish eater. And really with the B vitamins, probably a meat eater too. But if you can eat it properly in your whole food diet, then do it. But the second best thing to do is not ignore it. And that's the issue. There's basically the problem is most people think, I have a generally good diet. I'm generally okay. So generally it's fine. And the issue that we face, and seeing this, like, there's literally a mental health crisis. More and more people are having all sorts of problems. And I'm absolutely not saying that you can take a pill to improve all mental health problems. But what I am saying is the opposite is true, which is when you have a mental health problem, the first things you ever think of are all psychological, like I did. And I spent 5 months trying to diagnose myself with psychological ways I could fix things. And if I'd have just known that nutrition and a biological cure was also available in my circumstance, I would have jumped at that chance immediately. And so, like all things in life, it's a system. So it isn't about, like, you know, if you just take supplements or you just have a better diet, I mean, let's use depression as an example. Like, you can't take supplements and have better, you know, and cure your depression, because depression is usually, that is, you know, I'm no doctor and I'm certainly no therapist, but, you know, I'd say 90+% of depressive issues are psychological. So they are an issue of loneliness and sadness for the past, or, you know, like circumstances in your life. You can't eat your way out of that. But insomnia and anxiety, you can literally eat your way out of. You know, schizophrenia, like actual diagnosable mental health disorders, cognitive decline, massive one. You know, people talk about Alzheimer's and dementia. Like Professor David Smith at Oxford University, who's the head of pharmacology at Oxford University, is doing this massive trial with amazing results on high dosage supplementation, so supplements specifically of B vitamins and DHA omega-3 to reverse cognitive decline, so like Alzheimer's and dementia, with amazing results at the moment. And his theory as to why is because your brain's canopy ultimately Yeah, all of our brains are shrinking from the age of 25. Scientific fact. Terrifying, sure, but doesn't need to be. It's just a fact. Like, we're all decaying at some, in some
Yeah,
level anyway,
at
right?
different
So it's
rates.
just right, and it's just like it just stands to reason. It's growing until you're 25, then it's shrinking. Um, and the reality is, the experiences of Alzheimer's and dementia, the very common ones are sort of like, lack of location understanding, right? Like, where am I? Like, what's happening kind of thing. And, this is essentially plaque building up in your canopy and the synapses not firing across properly. And so you'll kind of just lose a sense of where you are. And then memory, so not understanding like your essentially the experiences from your life. And what he's really determining with his study is the brain is shrinking. The brain feeds on omega-3s and B vitamins. What happens if we give really high dosages of those things to feed the brain back what it needs? Surprise, surprise. So, I mean, like any scientific study, there's a lot more to go. But surprise, surprise, it's showing really positive results. And it's a very simple and obvious almost thing, right? Which is, your brain is a biological organ. What does it thrive on? These things. What happens if you give it to them? Great improvements. So I think this is the thing. Like, for me, nutrition has become a very well understood tool in our physical bodies and wellness. We understand that to have longer, healthier lives for our bodies, eating well more than we eat badly will determine more often than not whether we live long, healthy, and happy lives. The same is true for our mental health. It's one one system.
Right.
It's just that we don't think about it like that. We think about our brains as completely separate to our bodies, so just don't give it any thought. And the brain is a pretty hungry organ, right? 20% of our energy and blood supply goes to our brain, so it's actually a relatively small organ for how much it takes up. It's the hungriest organ in our whole body. It so stands to reason, like when you start to explain it to people like this, it stands to reason that making sure it gets the nutrients it needs every day is going to make you feel better.
Definitely. And has your sort of research, and I imagine one of those, gosh, whatever it is, almost 1,000 newsletters now that you've probably done. Have you gone down sort of the gut-brain axis route at all? So obviously there's some interesting stuff coming out from a microbiome perspective for brain health.
Yeah, so we're literally doing a scientific trial at the moment for a new product that we hope to bring out at the end of this year, but we will see, called a psychobiotic. So
nice.
you might be familiar with John Cryan talking about the psychobiotic revolution, which is a really fascinating book. So talking with him and Scott Anderson as well, who was the writer of that book, and just super fascinating. And so the psychobiotic specifically, why that's relevant to us is it's like a prebiotic, probiotic, but it's just like predominant focus is on cognition. So it's specific strain that has really identified, better mood, better thought, clearer thoughts, less anxiety, etc., etc. Whereas obviously the other side of the psychobiotic is literally for gut issues. And the way that we think about ourselves at Heights is we want to be the company that you go to for anything brain related. So this is sort of how we see ourselves as standing out in the market as well. Very confusing. Like, most people that want most supplements will go somewhere generic, like Vitabiotics, which, I'm happy to say, like, not very good. Like, frankly, it's a superbly average company with superbly average products, but good mass market. So how do you compete there? Well, you just say, like, not going into that middle market of like, we do everything. Because as soon as you're doing everything, like, the quality argument becomes super difficult. So we positioned ourselves as we're only going to bring products out that are about your brain's health, one way or another. And so if you've got bad gut and you wanted, and you can't go to the toilet or whatever, like, you wouldn't go to Heights for that. That doesn't make any sense. But if you wanted the best quality product for your thoughts, for cognition, we're researching and we would bring out the highest quality products in the market for that one use case. And I think that kind of differentiation is also just another way to build trust. We're trying to really not muddy the water. We're not trying to compete, with X, Y, and Z. We're trying to do our own thing and give people the confidence that if you want to have, the best opportunity of looking after your brain, go to Heights. If it's about your body or anything else, like, we're not even in the consideration matrix, ignore us.
Brilliant. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, I think. And it's a tricky one. I mean, it's obviously very different from a practitioner perspective, but this idea of, I think, having a a general base of knowledge, and then, as you say, kind of funneling it into a specific area of health or performance is a really powerful way, I think, of going about it. And I'm super excited about kind of the research you're doing from a gut perspective on the brain, because I think that's going to be a really exciting area to stay sort of up to date with. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, my co-founder is super excited about it. It's funny, like this whole story of, you know, the founding team. You know, really this has been my story. And this artist here, that he had really bad gut issues. So he had like a whole thing with gut issues and Simprove and like all this stuff. So, you know, he's very interested obviously in the gut microbiome, particularly from personal experience, whereas I was really interested in mental health problems from insomnia and anxiety. So I think it's super interesting, like where, you know, our first two products are going to be very much around the user stories of the things that we've personally experienced.
Yeah, brilliant. Dan, I'm very mindful of time, and I know you've got more responsibilities on this Saturday. Is there anything that you want to just finish with, or sort of emphasize, conclude with?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it's really simple, which is your brain is your most important organ, bar none. And making it a priority is one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And from like a very frank point of view, when you take care of your brain properly, the rest starts to fall into place. So if you think about the things we want in life, health, wealth, happiness, clarity, energy, better sleep, better decision making, so that we do better at work, so we're more productive, we're making better decisions, we're making more money, we're making better choices, etc., etc. They all stem from having a well-optimized brain. It is bonkers to me that it's so misunderstood, that there is literally such incredibly evidenced by science opportunity to feed our brains better, and the impact that that can have. And I mean, I'd love to say to all listeners, you know, if you'd love to try us out, then we will give you a £10 off a quarterly subscription with the code HealthPath at yourheights.com. But before listening to some charismatic marketer tell you about his company, then just go on our website and read our Trustpilot reviews, because nothing speaks of the quality of our product like our customer reviews. And we're super proud of all of them. But, you know, we get reviews every day about how our product's changing people's life. Like literally this morning, like most recent tweets I've done is from a customer leaving a Trustpilot review about how skeptical they were and how we've completely changed her sleep, her anxiety. She's so busy, she's so stressed, and all of these things are much better since becoming a customer 3 months in. You know, these are the reviews we get every single day. So don't listen to me, listen to our customers, and use the code HealthPath at yourheights.com. And thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about it.
No, thank you. Thank you for the offer to our listeners. Thank you for sharing your story. I truly think it's inspiring, and it's always great to hear founders who, I guess, have found that kind of mission and purpose through their own kind of struggles. It kind of just adds that additional sort of edge, I guess, to it as well. And it's obviously so clear that you're very passionate about this. So I'm looking forward to sharing this. Thank you for sparing time on a Saturday.
My pleasure.
And hopefully we can connect again at some point in the future.
Absolutely. IRL.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, mate.